Hello everybody, welcome to a NickFit video series for me, and MTG NickFit guy. What we've got here today is what I like to call Jund Value NickFit. This is the second iteration I've played. The first iteration was based off of a deck that one of the fellow NickFit players in the Discord had come up with, and the idea is to make liberal use of Kolaghan's Command and Eternal Witness, and I suppose alternatively Nissa Vital Force and Pulse of Murasa to get lots of mileage out of all the things that you're doing. So some of the stuff that we've got going on, we have our basic Veteran Explorer and Cabal Therapy package to supplement, and that gets us a bunch of mana right away, our basics, of which we have 8. The rest of the 1-drops, we have some more mana dudes in Deathrite Shaman. These are helpful just to continue kind of ramping out some of our more powerful things, and Fatal Push to help take out opposing Deathrite Shamans and some early plays like Tarmogoyfs and mostly Deathrite Shamans. I guess Delvers, yeah. We can kill some Delvers too. Similarly, in the 2-drop spot, we've got Abrupt Decay and then a 1 of Diabolic Edict. Again, these are generally targeted at early Delvers, Deathrite Shamans. Just got to keep the things off the board that are going to keep us from executing on our game plan by pressuring us or cutting off our lines of play. We've also got a Sakura-Tribe Elder as something we can Green Sun for. It's just something that it has a lot of value with Meren of Clan Toth because it's a sacrifice effect to add experience counters. Meanwhile, it can also help us ramp out our numerous basics to play our heavy top end that is typical of NickFit. Also typical of NickFit is the loaded down 3-drop spot. This is where you'll see most of the NickFit heavy hitters. You've got Pernicious Deed, you've got Tireless Tracker. Some of the more uncommon things we've got in here are the Kolaghan's Command and the Pulse of Murasa, which we're going to use to try to rebuy things like our Eternal Witness. In some cases, our like Sakura-Tribe Elder, maybe our Meren. Things tend to die, and we can recur our vets to get our lands out even more often. Something else that we've got in here is the Nissa Vastwood Seer. This is something that was not originally in the list that I got from the Discord, but my previous iteration I had a little bit less red in here because I didn't have the Chandra, so I was running 5 forests. And at the point that I added in the 5th forest, I kind of decided that that was enough basic forest that the first Nissa Vastwood Seer was a bit marginally better than the 3rd Tireless Tracker. Since most of the time we're not naturally drawing into our trackers, we often Green Sun for them, and having an extra thing to get that gets us lots of value seemed very valuable. And with the new Legend or Planeswalker rule going away for just a regular Legendary rule, we can play nice with the Nissa Vital Force and the Nissa Vastwood Seer at the same time. Other things we've got going on here, we have the Reclamation Sage, which previously was in my sideboard. I've decided to move it to the main for this build. Just a little extra utility, particularly good against things you need to blow up. It's nice to come in off of a show and tell. If the opponent is trying to put in Omniscience, we can blow it up. There's various other uses for it as well. In my 4-drop spot, just for ease of viewing, I've put my Green Sun Zeniths, but those really, as many of you know, those go just about anywhere on the curve. I have a Meren of Clan Toth. This, coupled with our Veteran Explorers, our Sakura-Tribe Elder, and just the fact that we'll probably be running our Eternal Witnesses, probably are just going to run into things to get experience counters so that we can buy back the Witness with things like the Pulse and Kolaghan's Command. Are going to give us experience counters that can let our Meren of Clan Toth just take over the game in the fair matchups when there's minimal graveyard interaction. We're just going to keep recurring things. They try to kill our threats, we just bring them back Can be very good. For this go round, I've added in Chandra, Torch of Defiance. This is something that we were tossing around in the Discord a little bit. It's a very powerful planeswalker. We really only get to make use of 3 of the modes, as the adding red doesn't have huge utility. We can pump that into, say, a Green Sun Zenith, or something like a Nissa, a Carnage Tyrant, Regisaur, or Thragtusk. But most of the time we're probably going to be plussing it until we get an emblem and helping use that to close the game. If we have to spend the -3, it's probably not a good spot, but it's still a nice option to have. And if we move on to sort of the 5+ drops, as I've got them grouped here, we've got the 2 copies of Nissa Vital Force. This is a very, very strong planeswalker in Nick Fit. We can get her down very quickly. Similar speed to Els, we can get her down probably turn 3 or 4 pretty regularly if we're able to actually execute on our Veteran Explorer and Sakura-Tribe Elder types of lines. The ability, the +1, is a very good clock, helps kill opposing planeswalkers, while the minus ability is very good for getting back things like the Deed, or in this case, we can like get back if we have enough mana, we could get do things like getting back Eternal Witness for Deeds, or getting back Eternal Witness for Kolaghan's command to keep running that show. For creatures to be able to usually get off a Green Sun Zenith, but also pretty decent top decks in the late game, we've got Carnage Tyrant, which is sort of our answer to the blue decks if we can go long. It's hexproof, it's trample, can't be countered. It's there to end the game. The Regisaur Alpha, another creature that's very good at closing the game. It comes down and immediately can just pummel a Jace, and synergizes very well with the Carnage Tyrant. A Regisaur Alpha into Carnage Tyrant turn is a lot of damage. And then last, we've got the Thragtusk, which is there to help give a little bit of a life boost. We might have lost some off of things like the Toxic Deluge. This list doesn't spend a ton of our life points outside of that Toxic Deluge, although if we are witnessing it back for any reason, that is going to add up. But it's always nice to have something that if our opponent plays like if an opponent plays a Edict effect, we still leave behind a body. It's good at blocking things like Gurmag Angler and so forth. If we run into Burn and we survive that long, that's pretty good. All right, so let's move on to the side. Or actually, let me talk about the land base here. Sorry for the scattered thing here. So, being a Veteran Explorer deck, we have a lot of basics. We have 8 of them, 4 Forest, and then 2 each of Mountain and Swamp. You'll notice we don't have a ton of red, but being able to cast that Chandra is very, very useful. So, and since that Chandra is for the more fair matchups, we might encounter something like a Back to Basics or a Blood Moon or something after Sideboard that might be problematic. And well, I guess the Blood Moon is not necessarily that big a deal since it'll help us get red. Something like a Back to Basics could be a very, very problematic for actually getting our red mana to cast the Chandra. As far as dual lands, we don't really need to run a ton, given all the basics that we have, but we do have 2 Bayou, considering this is a mostly green-black deck, and then I've got 1 each of Taiga and Badlands. I don't really find the need to double up other than the Bayou. Like I said, we don't need a ton of red sources, and I'd rather use the basics to fill that spot. Since we are running Deathrite Shaman, and it's just, how Legacy mana bases are built, we've got 8 fetches, all green, with each of them with the auxiliary colors we have of black and red. And then our 2 utility lands that are very typical of Nick Fit lists. We have Phyrexian Tower, which lets us sacrifice our Veteran Explorers without needing to cast something, and our opponent cannot respond to the mana ability. It also helps set up, and then with the next land, Volrath Stronghold, which returns a creature to the top of our library for 1 black and tapping it. That coupled with the Phyrexian Tower, I've had some very powerful loops going with using the Volrath Stronghold while sacking the Witness to the tower, put the Witness back on top, get a Kolaghan's command back after casting it on the next turn. And that kind of card advantage just grinds opponents into the dust if you're allowed to do that sort of unmolested. Alright, enough about the main board. Let's talk about the sideboard. Most of the sideboard is going to be to fight the blue decks and is going to be to fight combo. So we have a little bit of extra stuff for the grind plan. We've got our Pyroblasts, we've got our Carpet of Flowers, and we have Kolaghan's Command. And those are mostly for the fair matchups. The Pyroblast can also be brought in against the combo matchups to counter a particular business spell, or if we have started to shred their hand, we can use Pyroblast on their cantrips to try to keep them down while we exert some pressure with whatever we find. For the grindy matchups, we have another Kolaghan's Command, just again to keep them off their pressure and keep their hand light, return our things, all the things that Kolaghan's Command does very well. Carpet of Flowers, of course, if anybody playing blue, we're probably going to be bringing this in. It's especially useful against a deck like Miracles, where they would be benefiting from our Veteran Explorers, and we can sideboard out some number of our Veteran Explorers for those carpets. I find that to be typically very useful. And then if the deck is spreading it out on the board, something like a Grixis, Pyromancer, Rug Delver, or even Bug Delver, although sometimes their creatures get a little bit bigger, or our True Name Nemesis, we have the Pyroclasm to solve most swarm problems. Obviously, it's also very good against a deck like Death and Taxes, where we basically kill all of their things, Mom Protection things notwithstanding. Basically, all the black cards in the sideboard are for the combo matchup. The Diabolic Edict is a little bit more specifically for something like a Show and Tell or a Merit Lage deck, or possibly a deck that kind of runs out of True Name Nemesis without a lot of other dorks to block for the Edict. But the Thought Seizes, the Surgical Extractions, and the Lost Legacy are all for the sort of the heavy combo matchups, something like Storm, something like Show and Tell, other combo decks that have some kind of payoff. I especially like Lost Legacy against Elves. I like to take their Crater Hoofs and watch them cry. It's a lot of fun. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and join a league, and I hope you stick with me to check that out.